can't. I just can't. If I give up now, I could do anything I wanted to. And yet, even if I was with you, I could never forget.
Woo! Hey, this is Final Fantasy X-2 review. This is crazy, man. This is a big deal because it's the first ever direct sequel to a Final Fantasy game. Now, we've had Final Fantasy Legend of the Crystals, technically a sequel to Final Fantasy V, but it was an anime miniseries. That doesn't count. This is the first time it's been, and they didn't even try to hide it. It's just X-2. They don't care that that sounds dumb. This is when the game started to sound more like math equations than video game titles. Final Fantasy X-2 is an experiment. It's a part of this very experimental age of Final Fantasy that we are in, this PS2 era where they started just giving random things a shot. Do people want a sequel to a mainline game? They tested the waters with the international release of Final Fantasy X, where they included a 15-minute extra epilogue. Cliffhanger, kind of testing the waters to see who might want a sequel. Everybody did, and here we are. A couple years later, X-2. Final Fantasy X was a pilgrimage game. It was linear. That was part of the controversy when it came out, but it's a huge, long quest from start to finish, meeting a bunch of characters, hitting that goal, and that's the end of the game. It was a pilgrimage. That was the yearly High Summoner trek to Zanarkand, was what you do to kill Sin. I bonded with these characters the same way Tidus did in that game, and I really loved it. I loved the story, the gameplay, the characters, and everything. It's been a long time. I went on my own couple of pilgrimages since then. A lonely pilgrimage without friends in the world of Final Fantasy XI, followed by a real-life pilgrimage with friends in my journey across America where I played Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. What I'm trying to say is, it's been a long time, and I've been busy. You know when you go to college the first time for a full semester, and then you come back to your old friends, family, and everyone's still there, but something's different. You missed out on some things. People are a little just weirdly different than how you left them. That's what this game's like. I mean, right off the bat, you're seeing the massive tonal shift this game delivers. It opens with like a pop song sequence where three, the main characters, Yuna, who you probably remember, Riku, who you might remember, and Pain, who you don't remember, because she is a new character to Final Fantasy X-2. My first thought I wrote down in my notes was, what in God's name is going on? Yeah, that's what I wrote, because, well, Yuna has guns. First off, we should just lay that on the table. She used to be a high summoner white mage. Now she's got guns. Riku's still a thief, and Pain kind of takes the role of Auron, the warrior, tough wall guy. Why does Yuna have guns now? I'm not sure. Basically, the three of these girls make up the Gullwings. They take the ship from the last game and the crew with it, and they're kind of like pirates now. They're going around searching for spheres, which if you remember, spheres was kind of everything in the last game. You could equip a sphere could open a door, but a lot of spheres are also these little video recording devices of a land long gone. And they hunt these down, and I guess they sell them for money, and that's kind of where this game starts. It's not really a grand journey the way the first game was. It's ragtag, it's silly, it's wacky, and it's funky. In my review of Final Fantasy X, I compared that game directly to the Lord of the Rings trilogy. If I were to compare Final Fantasy X to a film series, the closest I could come up with is the 1976 hit crime drama Charlie's Angels.
Meanwhile, your competition is innovating!
Now that's a huge tonal difference, isn't it? 3 girls, they go on a mission, and they call them missions, and the aesthetic is all techno, like, mission begin, chapter 1, start. The old crew, this crazy maniac guy named Brother from the Al Bhed is kind of the commander. He tells you he's your eye in the sky, he's the guy in the chair, whatever you want to call him, and these girls go on these missions, and they are competing with other groups of people trying to find these spheres, but they're better than them. It's a totally different story. Charlie's Angels, it's an old reference. It's a reference that I heard before I even started this game, so a reference that I would be more familiar with, and maybe the viewers at home. I would compare this game to Powerpuff Girls, or the hit early 2000s cartoon Totally Spies. You see, all of these projects follow the same structure. 3 girls, they go on missions. One of them is bubbly and happy, one is stubborn and angry, and the other is the main one who's like, I guess, smart. The animation isn't bad, but man, it's something with the way the characters are always moving. They do that thing where they're constantly moving. It's so weird. It just takes you out. For some reason, like, they didn't do that in 10, so I don't know what the deal is. The facial animation is interesting too. I can't tell if it's better or worse. It's kind of the same that we got in Kingdom Hearts 1, where the characters are always going like, and then we go, like, they're always moving their lips very dynamically, and it throws me off a little bit. But I feel like it's interesting to look at, so I don't know how I feel about it. You know, the writing can get a little bit to the cheese level of Kingdom Hearts as well.
I don't like your plan. It sucks.
They almost verbatim say the line, "My friends are my power." It's been 2 years at this point since Kingdom Hearts released and took the world by storm, so actually the year this came out, I believe, we'd be getting Kingdom Hearts 2 fairly soon, so that's kicking off. And I believe the 3 of these characters make a small appearance in Kingdom Hearts 2. I think they are the newest Final Fantasy characters to appear in the game. Not to get sidetracked, but the argument that people try to make, like, Final Fantasy is super relevant to Kingdom Hearts. I don't know about that. So a lot of the story I don't understand, and it is hidden in side quest. So I gave you the general introduction. They're hunting for spheres. Now what kicks this off is they find a sphere of a guy who kind of looks like Tidus. Where is he? What is he doing? Basically. The rest of the story, there's not much of it, because this is a side quest heavy game. Another first for the franchise. This is the most open Final Fantasy game ever. Ironic, because Final Fantasy X was the most linear. The very cool thing about this game, and an underrated part of asset reusing sequels, people like to dump on them because it's lazy, oh, they're reusing the same thing, but in the end of Final Fantasy X, you have the airship and you can access any area and go back and explore it fully. So in 10-2, you immediately have access to all of those areas. I love when sequels are consistent. You know how in Metroid games, they have to come up with some kind of excuse like, oh, whoops, you got attacked by a monster and you lost all your powers, gotta get them back. That always bugs me. I get it. You have to do it for some games like Metroid, but the fact that this game lets you roam free immediately, and every one of those areas is changed slightly. It's been 2 years since Final Fantasy X, so there's stuff going on, and there's mini games, there's side quests, there's cool items you can get, stories you can find about characters from the old game or new characters. I like it a lot. That aspect is super cool. The theme I think that this game tries to convey is Unity. It's been 2 years since the defeat of Sin by Yuna. She's kind of a big deal around here, even though she just decided to go off and be a pirate with her friends. The world kind of split into different beliefs, New Yevon and the Youth League. Yevon being the god that you kill, so it's like people who are still believers versus the young folk who are trying to butt in and why don't you grow old and die, you boomers, so we could take over, you know, that kind of relevant to today. And you actually get to choose a side at different points. Like, not only are there lots of side quests and the game's open to you, but you can choose a path to generally take the story at certain points. There are multiple endings to this Final Fantasy game. So there's cool stuff going on around here. I just don't know how profound it is and what it's trying to say about Unity, because again, the writing is so cheesy, and it tries to be cheesy, so I don't know why it goes for this big major point they try to make about standing with your fellow man or whatever at the end of the day. Let's skip over story a little. Let's talk about some new stuff. There's like platforming now? Same exact areas. I should say the areas are not at all changed. Not a single bit in terms of how they're structured and the path. Same map. You drop Tidus in there and it looks exactly like Final Fantasy X. Except that if you hold B, you can have Yuna like jump on stuff, kind of in the way that you do in like Ocarina of Time. There's no button, but if you walk off a cliff, you can jump. And there's hidden areas you can get to, some areas you can climb and find treasure chests and stuff. A weird addition, like this is the first time you can platform in a Final Fantasy. Whoa, okay. But the battle system, they completely changed that too. That's okay. Now I haven't really mentioned more characters other than Yuna, Riku, and Pain. They're your party. That's it. There is a monster collecting aspect to this game. Kind of like Pokemon, you can trap monsters and you can use them on your party, and it's very complex. There's a lot going on, and I didn't bother with it because I wanted to use the main cast. So there's a whole door of possibilities that I'm not even going to discuss because I didn't look into it, but upon a replay, I'd definitely check that out. This game has the most replay value of any of the ones that I've played so far. But the reason I never felt like I needed to change out of the 3 main cast is because there's a job system. And I kept training their jobs. I didn't want to get rid of them. There's a lot of weird jobs, like the Festivalist, where you dress up in like a kimono or whatever, and you kick a sandal off into the sky. This is also the most Japanese Final Fantasy game probably so far. You can be a singer and like sing spells, like sing monsters to sleep and stuff. There's a gambler, which was probably my favorite. You just roll dice like Setzer in Final Fantasy VI, and if you get snake eyes, you do like times 20 damage. So good. But the interesting thing about this is that you change jobs mid-battle on this thing called the Dress Sphere Grid. Not to be confused with the Sphere Grid in Final Fantasy X. It's a little personal grid for each character, and you set up certain jobs. And when you switch jobs, if you switch over like a button, you gain access to a new ability that Dress Sphere Grid gives you. So you're kind of stacking onto yourself as you change jobs. The game wants you to conduct a strategy of all of your characters switching jobs at correct times to gain more abilities and synergize with each other. It's super deep and very cool. Also, we're in an active battle system again. It's kind of crazy. I haven't been in an active battle since Final Fantasy IX. That was 6 months ago. So like story-wise, environment-wise, nothing's changed. The story and the tone, completely different. The battle system, completely different. There's no set job for battles. Your characters change as much as you want, but in the cutscenes, they all have a standard job. Like I said, Pain's the warrior, Riku's still a thief, but Yuna is a gunner, cannon. She has 2 pistols, and that's her weapon of choice in this game. I don't know why. The game itself, Final Fantasy X-2, had a collector's edition. You may have heard of this. It came with these 2 guns, and it's not a display thing. Those guns, that's a controller.
Look at this! There are no buttons! There's barely any buttons on this guy!
And you can control this game with the guns. I don't know, I guess there's a stick on one of them, you move them around, and the trigger is like the A button. or something. This is just so bizarre, this game. I really want those controllers. They probably go for like $100. But yeah, all the jobs have really cool gimmicks. Like the gunner itself, there's an attack where you just have to press the button to shoot as much as you can within a given time slot. And since it's an active battle system, that happens while you're choosing the other attack for another character. So you're spamming the trigger while you're selecting the next attack. Battles can be wild, but it was super fun. I'm guessing it's the same gameplay designers as Final Fantasy X, which I adored the gameplay of that game. I love this too. I think I prefer 10. 10 was just so tight and focused. This is a little messy, but you have so much you can do, and you can create your own fun out of it. And of course, there's the monster collecting thing, which I didn't even do, but it's great. So as you explore this land, you encounter characters like Wakka and Lulu. They're back, you know, there's a little story with them. There's a couple of stories with lots of characters from the old game. I was disappointed to not ever meet up with Auron, but there could have been a cutscene that I just missed because I didn't do the side quest. There's so much going on. You go to Zanarkand, the famous endgame area. You could just go there immediately. But the famous spot, the opening shot of Tidus on the mountain looking out with his narration, you can go to that spot and it's like a tourist attraction. I feel like it's kind of a meta commentary thing. This game is so not taking itself seriously and kind of deliberately jabbing the audience like, doesn't this suck? It's all a tourist trap now. It's not even cool or spiritual like it was. People are just crawling over. There's monkeys here crawling all over. What were they intending for me to feel there? I don't know. I guess that's just the cynicism of the world bleeding into the oldness of it. I mean, there's no real use for these temples anymore because they used to be used to, like, praise the god that we killed. Very interesting to continue a game past the point of killing God. You might be wondering who the antagonist is. It's like a giant robot. Doesn't really hit the same, does it? It's interesting. I had so much fun rechasing my steps from Final Fantasy X. I played that game 4 months ago or something, and I know people complain about asset reusing and just the game being too samey, but I don't know if this is a hot take. I kind of want more sequels like that. More sequels that directly actually take place realistically after the first. Like, why would Yuna lose access to all these places? Why would these places be different at all? It's only been 2 years. Some stuff changed, but not a lot. I feel like a game is so much more immersive as a sequel when they don't go crazy with new stuff all over the place, or it's a completely new adventure. You're not going to see a single area from the first game. Doesn't vibe with me that much. It's like, well, is this a sequel or not? Every step of this game made me remember one of the solemn, quiet, dramatic moments of the Final Fantasy X pilgrimage. Like, oh man, it's just like a little hut there, but I remember that hut. That's when we like went under for the rain and we all bonded over that. Like, there's so many great moments of Final Fantasy X, man. This was just like a trip through memory lane. I wish this story was as gripping. It's like my favorite parts of the sequel were remembering the original, so I don't know how good that paints the picture of this game. But the point I'm trying to make is that asset reusing sequels have tremendous underestimated power. I want more of them. The story may not be as interesting, but this game has so many side quests, and I don't even know if I've experienced like half of them. Maybe half of them? There's a lot. Because the thing is, this may be the Charlie's Angels of Final Fantasy, but it's also the Majora's Mask of Final Fantasy. An asset reusing sequel, taking place a little while after the first, coming out a few years later, existing completely in the shadow of the original, which is regarded as a masterpiece. Now, where these games split off is that Majora's Mask was a cult classic, but since then, come on, everybody loves Majora's Mask. It's been talked about to death. It's a lot of people's favorite, so it's not really a cult classic anymore. But Final Fantasy X-2 very much is. I think there's more hate for this game than love, for sure. And I completely understand, but If you love Final Fantasy X's gameplay, you will love Final Fantasy X-2's gameplay. If you love the story, you probably won't love the story. But is it worth playing? I think so. And there's a lot of really cool, interesting side games that you don't get in the original 10. Like, there's some cool side quests there, but there's like a first-person shooter side quest in this game. It's janky, but it's like, it's cool enough to be fun. I didn't like Blitzball. There's a new kind of Blitz game. It's called Sphere Break, where you like flip coins and you have to do some math to like add up coins in a certain amount of time. I'm not gonna explain the whole thing. It was fun though. Speaking of math, oh my god, I found the math cave. You heard about the math cave? I think this is like an infamous thing. I think I still have my notes here. Yeah, you see this? I think for like 2 hours, I was stuck in the math cave. Now this math cave is a bunch of doors in a hall, and you have to record numbers down that you see and like add them together. But I'm not gonna go through all the steps. It's very complicated. It's not just adding 2 plus 2. It's also not a thing you can look up in a guide. The math is based off of like how much money you make in the cave and how many battles. So you need to like keep track of that. You can see, I don't know if it shows up. That's me trying to keep track of like my battles in a tally mark. This is all the math I had to do. You had to remember the answers to other questions, and they don't tell you this. So eventually I just started writing stuff down. I mean, it was complicated, but it was very fun. When was the last time you had to sit down with a pen and a paper to figure out a thing in a game? That brings me so much joy. Maybe not to some people, but it does for me. And when I beat the game, it said that I completed 56% of the story. There was a lot I didn't get to see. So, this might not be my favorite Final Fantasy, but in terms of replay value, if I'm gonna replay any of them, I'm choosing this game. I'll be able to see a completely new set of stories. I'll choose a different path that I chose and get a new ending or something like that. As cool as that is, I will always prefer a game to just tell me what the story is. Because remember Pain, this new character? I was waiting for side content to explain her backstory. I think I missed it. So I don't really know a lot about her. She's just a new character. She kind of knows these guys that we deal with, but I know nothing else. I think I missed the whole big reveal, if there is one, of her. Whoops. Now there is a canon ending. I think it's canon. It's called the perfect ending, where you get 100% completion, which you actually can't do unless you do a second playthrough anyway, so I was never going to get it. But I'm not going to spoil it here. I don't know how I feel about it. I looked it up. It's weird. It's weird. And if they're going to continue the Final Fantasy X line, I mean, it's been 15 years or something, so I don't know about that, but I'll be there if they do. Because this might not be as cool as 10, but I do like it. I understand why it's controversial. I understand why people hate it. Thing is though, not a lot have played it. Speaking of math from before, I'm on a math kick. Let's do some more math. See, we have a unique opportunity here. The Final Fantasy X 10.2 HD Remaster has one set of achievements containing both games on Steam and on all the other platforms, but I got Steam right here. So the very first achievement you can get in Final Fantasy X is called Speaking in Tongues. 73.8% of players have achieved that achievement, aka 73.8% of players have started Final Fantasy X, which is actually pretty good odds for Steam. You ever look on like the first achievement you can get in a game on Steam and it's like 10%? It's like, I'm convinced people don't play games on Steam, but that's pretty good. Let's scroll down and we have the Eternal Calm. Beat the final boss, beat the game, beat Final Fantasy X. 18.4%. Again, for Steam, that's pretty good. That's not bad to beat it. It's a 40-hour game, so you know, not the majority of people are probably going to drop it, but that's not bad for beating the game. Let's look at 10.2. The earliest achievement that I got that seems to be the most common, I think it is the most common, it's called Zeroed Out. Basically beat the first boss, required boss of Final Fantasy X-2, 9.7%. Now, we do have to discuss outliers a little bit. There has to be a group of people who bought the 10-10-2 collection specifically to play 10-2 and not 10-1. But that number's got to be minuscule, all right? So, basically, half of the people who beat 10 even bothered trying to start 10-2. Let's look at how many people beat it. Defeat the final boss? 3.1%. That's pretty harsh. Now, maybe these numbers are going to be different on PlayStation or Xbox, but those are the stats I got. That's kind of sad. This game doesn't have a good reputation, and I understand it. I really do, but that's a low number, man. That's not fair. This game deserves a better shot than that because there are some cool stuff. So this is my message to you. If you like 10, you'll like some of 10 too, but who am I kidding? You might hate it. This is a strange conclusion. It's not much of a conclusion at all. Take this away. I'm absolutely gonna replay this game. And I'd replay it sooner than any of the others, including 10. Some people do a yearly playthrough of 10, kind of to tie in with the yearly pilgrimage of the 10 world. That's cute, but like also, there's not a lot of gameplay difference there. You can build your sphere grid a little bit differently, but in 10-2, there are jobs I didn't even find. There's like 6 jobs I didn't get my hands on. My gameplay experience can be completely different, or I could just forget jobs and use the monsters. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of stories that I missed out on. I could actually unlock the true ending if I wanted. Interesting experiment. Again, we're in the experimental age. The PS2 is the experimental age for Final Fantasy. And we're almost out of it. But for now, we're gonna put the Final Fantasy X series on the shelf a little bit. We will return very shortly. Next time, we're going full spin-off. We're jumping into a sub-series that I have no idea if it's good or not, but we're gonna see. Alright, I'm gonna go kill someone. Oh, I almost forgot, Sid update. He's the same exact guy. He's the same exact character from the last one. Alright, bye.